Welcome to Conversations with Terry McBride. This is video number 8, Choice of Mental Environment. And remember, as you watch these videos and explore these ideas, as you think about them, remember to get underneath the specifics being talked about and just notice if there's something that you think you might be able to use to improve the quality of your life. Because these videos are about you making your dreams come true. Now we're moving through the concepts of taking charge of the creative mind, and we've broken them down. I've broken them down into choice of destination, choice of action. This one is choice of mental environment. Then the next video is going to be on choice of emotional environment and Thanksgiving. As one begins to understand how choice works and how one can weave these concepts together to take charge of their mind and thereby take charge of their life, they build upon one another. When I was sick and studying all these different books, one of the first things that sort of jumped out at me was this concept of affirmations. I like calling it self-talk. That if we're going to take charge of our lives, if we're going to take charge of our consciousness, if you will, like that video that we did before on consciousness creates reality, part of taking charge of our consciousness is taking charge of this, what I call the mental environment. Certainly, thoughts are important. What I think the key in taking charge of the mind is being able to take charge of the, if you will, the dominant thoughts that run your mind. I don't know anybody, including myself personally, I don't know anybody personally, who's ever gotten rid of all of the negative thoughts that come up. Those are just old habit patterns, old ideas, if you will, the old story about how we hold ourselves. And as I was studying and reading, what these books were saying is that if I wanted to change the specifics in my life, if I wanted to change my results, I needed to change the story. I needed to change my self-image, who I believed myself to be. And part of that change involved taking charge of what was going on in my mind. Now, I had a problem in the beginning with some of the first books I read that said, your affirmations need to be in the first person, present tense, stated positively, as if the thing you're affirming is already true. Now, I took that to mean that while I'm laying in the hospital, scheduled for a surgery tomorrow morning, I was supposed to do some kind of self-talk that said, I, Terry McBride, am perfectly healthy right now. The problem I had was when I stated something like that I'm perfectly healthy right now, what am I doing in the hospital scheduled for surgery? It just seemed to me that what I was trying to get my mind to think about and talk about, if you will, that little voice inside, if what I was trying to get it to do was so far away from what I held to be true, my mind wouldn't even pay attention. It was just like, oh yeah, give me a break, cut me some slack, that kind of thing. So what I decided I was going to do was begin to explore how might I use this idea of choosing my thoughts so that it worked for me. So the first thing I did was set up what I called a negative monitor. I mean, I'd never read anything about that, but I was noticing, as I've mentioned in previous videos, when I did some action, when I put the sign on my door, be positive or be gone, that what happened was people, when they came in, wouldn't want to talk about the story so much, the drama, the sickness, because I didn't want to do that. And so I set up a negative monitor that when I was alone, I would just be aware of where my mind was going, what the dominant thoughts were that were involved in my daily life. And if I ran into, the negative monitor was to let me know when I started down the poor me, the victim, oh, ain't it awful. And it wasn't to judge that I shouldn't go there. I mean, I didn't like going there. But all the negative monitor was to do was to notify me when I was going down a road, and did I want to go down there? And sometimes when I'd start down the drama road of, oh, ain't it awful, it's not my fault, I was, sometimes when the negative monitor would say, do you notice where you're going? I would say, you're right, and I have the right to go there. And other times I would say, yeah, I don't want to go there. Because what I found was if I could take these negative stories that I had, if I could stop them early, I could think about something else. But if I let them go too much, they just like built up a head of steam, and all of a sudden I found myself really depressed. So I first set up a negative monitor. One of the things I noticed was how much negativity I had in my own mind about me achieving what I wanted. And it wasn't just in health. It was about being a good father, being a good husband, finishing college, finding a job. There was just so much negatives in there, in my own mind. And at first I got depressed about that. Well, I don't want to even think about this anymore. And then I remembered, these are just habits of thought, Terry. That's all your beliefs are. They're habits of thought. Beliefs are essentially an idea that you think about the same way over time, and after a while you call it a belief. And so I started with this negative monitor. Then as I began to use the tools of choice, all right, I want to start moving towards health instead of dealing with disease. That was the video on choice of destination. That this idea to begin to take the energy of my life, the energy of what I was doing, choice of action, and take this idea of choice of mental environment and begin to think thoughts that supported me in where I was going and what I wanted to do. In video number 4, where it talked about you are not alone, what I did was write, I talked about, I wrote a statement of being. And because what I wanted to begin to believe was that I was not alone. So I wrote out a statement of being, if you will. These are the thoughts I want to think about in regards to this journey I'm on and whether I'm alone. And so the statement of being starts off, as I move into this time of creation, I feel the power of something bigger than me, moving with me, supporting me and empowering me. And then it goes on. And I would read that several times a day with the idea of when my mind would go to, oh, this looks like such a huge endeavor, this huge project of me trying to get well, I would want to come up with, yeah, but I'm not alone. As I move into this time of creation, I feel the power of something. And so what I was trying to do was to get my mental environment to support me in the actions I wanted to take, which would support me in accomplishing what I want. That's what choice of mental environment is about. Sometimes they are. Right now, when my children come tonight, we're going to have a great time. No matter what's going on with me, we're going to have a great time. Other times, on a goal, I would choose a mental environment that supported me doing the plan. When I thought I needed to do things during the day, I would choose a mental environment that supported me doing what I said I was going to do. That's what we talked about in video number 6. The idea of choice of destination was that I began to write out things I wanted to think about that would support me in this choice of destination, this place I wanted to go. So I wanted to begin to believe that I was not only moving to this thing I wanted, but I was doing what I needed to do every day. So I wrote an ideal scene that says, every day I enjoy using choice as concentrated meditation and my ideal scenes to facilitate me following through I began to write out things and then read them several times a day that would support me in this idea of weaving the tools of choice together. So I began moving to the life I did want, and thinking about the life I did want, and supporting myself in the things I needed to do to create that life. I began to choose a mental environment that supported me doing that. And I had this negative monitor. When I started down a road that didn't support me, I would just say, is this where you want to go? Or do you want to think these new thoughts? That's what choice of mental environment is about. And it's not just writing some statements out. How do you feel? Much of the way the mind works is a stimulus response mechanism. Something happens, it comes in, and we respond to it based on old habits. How do you feel after you have lunch with your friends and you talk about what you talk about? You go away excited? Do you go away, motivated to make your dreams come true? Or do you spend time at lunch talking about all the drama and all the this and all the that? And when you walk away, how do you feel? This idea of taking charge of your mental environment is not just the words that we say over and over to ourselves. It's not just what we're choosing to think about. It's what are you choosing to do? This is where it weaves together with action. If you're saying you want to take better control of yourself and you need to walk every day, how do you support yourself with a mental environment that supports you walking? Because when you go walk, you can it supports your mind believing. There's a story in the hospital where I finally I can't lay in bed anymore. It was after a big surgery. I had a lot of drama for several weeks around, ain't it awful? And then what I got was, I can't stay here. I need to begin to be actively involved in getting better. And so I called the nurse and said, I want to walk down the end of the hall and back. And I was fairly weak, and she said, well, I'll tell you what, let me get the wheelchair and I'll go with you in case you run. And sure enough, so anyway, we got up, and it's a great story. As we were trying to get all the IVs that I had and all situated, I kept worrying about my, my hospital gown. I couldn't get it closed in the back, and the nurse is watching me, and I started to get discouraged, and she said, Terry, we've all seen your butt, so let's go for a walk. Anyway, so I got up and went down. So I walked to the end of the hall real slow, and about halfway back, I was just out of gas. So I sat in a wheelchair, and she wheeled me back to my room, put me in bed. And then she went to get a pain pill. And as I'm laying in bed, I'm feeling like, wow, this is great. I mean, all I did was walk down to the end of the hall and back. But that action supported me in thinking the things I wanted to think, which was, I'm taking charge of my body. This idea of taking charge of your mental environment is not just the written words. You can support yourself in believing what you want to believe and talking to yourself the way you want to talk to yourself by acting the right way. This is what I talked about. They weave together. You can act yourself into right thinking, and then you can think yourself into right action. The idea of choice of mental environment is to bring these tools together. This choice of destination. Now you've got a plan of action. What thoughts do you need to be thinking as you're supporting yourself doing what you said you think you need to do to get this thing? And what do you want to believe about as you follow through, whether or not you will achieve it? That's what choice of mental environment is about. It's one of the key things in taking charge of your consciousness. Go to your system, go to your workbook, and write out, what do you want to think? I have my workbook. I have affirmations in here that I can, when I'm on the road, I can just open it up and read them, and this is the truth about my life. That's how these tools work together. Get involved. Get a system that allows you to begin to get clearer and clearer on what you're moving to. Get a system that allows you to get on paper what you think you need to do, and then support yourself with a mental environment to follow through. You're powerful. You are magnificent. And I send you love. I send you joy. And I send you power.